of Tennessee is recognized if you're ready. Yeah.
Quran, thank you very much.
Sure, of course.
And to our witnesses, thank you. Dr. Yoon, you and I have actually met before. You used to frequent Professor Dewey Dane's events at Vanderbilt University, my alma mater, so it's good to see you here. Dr. Holtz-Eakin, it's good to see you again, too. We met a number of years ago in a different role, and welcome to you, Ms. Bailey. I thought I'd start out with you, Dr. Holtz-Eakin. Today in your testimony earlier, you did a very convincing job of relaying how housing prices have been moving upward very dramatically here in the United States. And one of the issues that I wanted to discuss with you is the artificial increase in price that the Davis-Bacon Act forces for affordable housing. You seem to describe very well what is to me a supply problem here. And we've got Davis-Bacon Act requirements that essentially add roughly $30 per square foot to the cost of a home. I'd just like to get your thoughts on what that has to do in terms of what that might do in terms of incentivizing developers to go in a different direction. Where does that, impact the supply of housing when we're desperately in need of more supply?
Well, certainly an artificially inflated wage is a cost that has to be included in the price of the unit. And it doesn't really make sense to have a law that does that. You should pay prevailing wages, set by market conditions wherever you're building, and that would be a preferable way to go, in my opinion. It leads to higher costs. There's no question about that. It also changes the builder's calculation of what kind of unit to build. Are you going to build a low-income unit when you've already got that base cost, and then you might want to build something aimed at the upper end of the market, and we've seen that happen in recent years. So I think it is on that list of things that's causing the cost of building to be artificially inflated, and taking those costs out would be a good idea.
Yeah, I think the Berkeley study indicated a $30 per square foot impact. That could be 10 to 20% depending on the state that you live in. In my state of Tennessee, it's going to be on the higher end of that spectrum. But this is a significant increase in the cost of affordable housing, and I think your point is well taken that it would have a very negative impact on price. I'd like to come to just stay with you for a few more minutes, Dr. Holtz-Eakin. There is now a voucher program that's being negotiated by appropriators. They're talking about 140,000 vouchers, roughly $30 billion of more demand, it looks to me, coming into a marketplace, again, that's constrained on the supply side. What would you predict the impact of these vouchers to be on the supply of housing and the pricing?
A permanent expansion in subsidies for demand is going to raise prices. So that's an unmistakable directional implication of this. And perversely, at the moment, you could spend that money, say, next year, and the Fed will do everything within its power to undo the impact of that demand stimulus because they're trying to cool the market and need to. And so it will be a lot of taxpayer dollars to no particular good effect.
You mentioned the Fed. I'd like to come to you, Dr. Yoon, to talk a bit about what's happening right now. I think the Fed's job has been made enormously difficult because of the policies that have been implemented, whether they're policies that have waged war on the oil and gas industry here, that have driven prices through the roof. Everybody that's been to the pump knows this. The policies that drove a massive stimulus package that was passed on a completely partisan basis in March of last year. We've got inflation at levels that we've not seen in more than 40 years. So the Fed has been required to do a couple of things. One, the mortgage-backed securities on their balance sheet are an enormous number, and they're letting those run off right now. Chair Powell actually indicated to me that he would not rule out selling at a loss these mortgage-backed securities. So I can imagine what impact that might have on the marketplace, and also raising rates. So if you think about this in the context with the Fed's required actions right now, whether it be selling mortgage-backed securities or raising rates, how does that impact? These inflationary policies that have driven it are having a very important impact on the housing market. If you could just sort of take us through the logic of that.
The spread between the 10-year Treasury yield, this morning I saw it at 3%. Under normal circumstance, the mortgage rate should be about 4.8%. Rather, we have a mortgage rate that is 5.8% because of the undoing of the quantitative easing, including this potential sale of the mortgage-backed security, or certainly not repurchasing. So we have a much larger spread, which is leading to home sales decline. Many realtors, again, we have 1.5 million realtors across the country, including from Tennessee, and they ask, when will the mortgage rate stop rising? And I said, once the inflation begins to top out and begins to show that it's peaking and we will decelerate. So anything to constrain the overall consumer price inflation, then the market, I think, will begin to say, well, maybe we have topped out on inflation and mortgage rate could also top and maybe even decline somewhat.
Well, it seems that inflation continues to go just one direction now, and that's up. You look at the last month's posting of 9.1%. That was an acceleration from 8.6 the month before. I'm very concerned about the direction that it's going. And again, the policy decisions that are being made by this administration seem to be all in favor of more inflation. So I'm concerned about the impact on the housing market in my own home state. We're hearing it loud and clear. Mortgage rates are up. That makes housing less affordable. And I'm very concerned about the negative impact it will have on the housing market and long-term the impact it'll have on supply that you have both done such a good job of explaining. That's indeed what the problem is. Thank you all for your testimony. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Harry. Senator Menendez of New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Home ownership has long been a cornerstone of the American